Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll be returning to Sonic, but instead of continuing from Shadow the Hedgehog, the next main game, or spin-off, depending on how you see it, we're going to be going with Sonic's other spin-off, a racing game no less, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, one of my personal favorites. We'll get back to Shadow the Hedgehog much later, and trust me, we will be getting to this game much later. The first Sonic Riders game was released in the year of Sonic's 15th anniversary, the same anniversary that also included Sonic 06. Sonic Riders is a game that I have played time and time again as early as my days back in grade school. I put so many hours into this game because I simply enjoyed it. If you didn't know, the Riders games were all racing games, but instead of driving cars like every other racer that had them, Sonic and friends instead used these hoverboards that the game calls Extreme Gear. Alright, it's time to get into the first game, so let's begin. The story is pretty basic compared to the main titles. Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles are given invitations to the World Grand Prix that is being hosted by Dr. Eggman, with the entry fee being 1 Chaos Emerald per person. Along the way, Team Sonic will encounter their rivals in this tournament, the Babylon Rogues, a team of treasure hunting thieves that want to prove that they're the fastest of them all while also wanting to awaken Babylon Garden. The team includes Jet the Hawk, Wave the Swallow, and Storm the Albatross. Character-wise, there's nothing else that needs to be explained about them. You have your good guys that are here for the fun, and then you have your rivals that are here to be cocky jerks. And with the power of friendship and trust, our group stops Eggman from completing his scheme and fighting a genie that unlocks a magic carpet. Yeah, there really isn't any need to look deep into this game's story. It's short, it's simple, and that's the way I like it in a racing game. If there's a few things I can include, it's the 3D models of the characters. They're passable, and graphically the game overall looks good. I found no hiccups with the game at all except for this one scene with Amy. Like seriously, what the heck? Ugh. The voice actors from the Adventure games and Heroes have now been replaced by the 4Kids actors from the Sonic X anime. Technically, Shadow the Hedgehog will be their first Sonic game to voice over, but for Sonic Riders, I think they did a good job. Ryan Drummond, who originally voiced Sonic, was now replaced by Jason Griffith, who is personally my favorite Sonic actor, with the same being the case for Dan Green as Knuckles, who you may already know voices Yugi Muto from the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. And how can I possibly forget Mike Pollock, who is to this day the voice actor of Eggman. He is the definitive voice of Eggman, and I could never imagine anyone else taking his place.
I put together a little extra something to spice things up. I call it the X-World Grand Prix, a tournament to see who's the best of the best with extreme gear. Not just a race, but a special race to see who's the fastest.
Okay, with all that out of the way, let's get into the gameplay. Sonic Riders is your usual racing game where you finish 3 or more laps to win first place. When it comes to the controls, every character feels very tight and responsive when you're taking turns left or right when needed. Throughout the map, you will need to take sharp turns, otherwise you'll be risking yourself falling down a cliff or slowing down heavily when hitting grass or the walls. At face value, you may think this is no different from your typical Mario Kart, but for those who never played Sonic Riders, you will be mistaken. For one, Sonic Riders introduces the air meter, which is pretty much your fuel. If it gets empty, then you'll be forced to get off your gear and run at a default speed. But don't worry, there are workarounds. You can either stop by these fuel stations to fill up your tank, stun your opponents by using the boost attack, or hit an item box that carries some air. That isn't all though. By collecting a certain number of rings, you can level up with the max being 3. The higher the level, the bigger the meter, your speed boost, and the less amount of air that is currently being drained. There's also shortcuts that you can go into depending on your character's skill type, similar to Sonic Heroes. Your speed type characters can grind on rails, your flying types can get on these special rings that let them fly for a few moments, and finally the power types that punches their way through obstacles. Then lastly, you have the trick system. Before jumping on hills or the arrow mark signs, you hold the jump button. The longer you hold it, the higher the air time, and when you have that air time, you can do tricks by moving around the left stick. This is also the main way to gain air fuel. The better the trick, the higher the rank, and the air refuel. Considering the importance of staying on top while also being careful on how much fuel you're using when boosting, drifting, and just riding your gear, this game isn't exactly beginner friendly compared to Mario Kart, Crash Team Racing, or even the future Sonic games like All-Star Racing that involve cars. In those games, it's more simplified because all you need to worry about is making sure you have the skills to make it to the top. Sonic Riders requires the player to be a lot more skillful with their resources. For some players out there, that may be a turnaround for understandable reasons. Besides the normal race stuff, there are a total of 16 playable characters. When you first start, you only have 7, but after completing the 2 stories and finishing the special missions, you can unlock the rest of the remaining characters like Cream the Rabbit, Shadow the Hedgehog, and Rouge the Bat. There's also the Sega IPs from the non-Sonic games like Knights, I, and Ulala. And of course there is multiplayer, but unfortunately I don't have the footage right now, but I will say when playing with friends or family, it's a real fun time. For the racetracks, there's a total of 16, 8 for the normal tracks and 8 for the alternate tracks, plus the bonus tracks after completing the Grand Prix races, where you can race to win rings that you can bring to the shop to buy new extreme gear that can come with their own skill sets and abilities. Overall, Sonic Riders is a fun, fast-paced racer that requires the player to be very skilled and careful with their gear. The controls are great, the tracks are fun to race through, and the amount of characters that you can unlock for this game gives you a ton of replay value. And personally for me, the first Sonic Riders game is my favorite with just how good it plays. The next game, Sonic Riders Zero Gravity, was released in January 2008 for the Nintendo Wii, and later ported on the PlayStation 2. And due to Zero Gravity being specifically developed for the Wii, the game's controls were mainly based off of the motion controls. More on that later, after I talk about everything else real quick. The story is more or less the same in terms of the length. In this game, robots from Meteor Tech are causing chaos thanks to these gravity rings that are connected to Babylon Garden. With the teamwork from both Team Sonic and the Babylon Rogues, the two stop the rampage by defeating Dr. Eggman and destroying this mutated robot in the guts. That's the story in a nutshell. There's a lot more beef in the story, but it's nothing that big to the point where it needs to be in-depth discussion about. That aside, the soundtrack is probably the best thing about this game. Out of the 3 Riders games, Zero Gravity's soundtrack hits the hardest. I'm talking about the menu music, half of the stage musics, and especially the 2 main themes in this game, Ungravity and Catch Me If You Can. Man, they're so good. Graphically, the game is just fine, but visually in the case of the PlayStation 2 port, it looks very blurred. Alright, enough of that, let's get into the gameplay. Since the game is very similar to the first Sonic Riders game in terms of gameplay, I won't be needing to discuss too much about the game besides the obvious changes. Like I mentioned earlier, the game was originally developed for the Wii, and because of that, the game's controls were based on motion controls. Unlike the first Riders game where the controls were precise and tight, with every character you played including the extreme gear that were equipped with their own skill sets, Zero Gravity's controls feel like there's something weighing me down, like I'm holding on to a ton of rocks.
What's in these bags, rocks? Hey, these are rocks. Why is your suitcase full of rocks?
It just feels stiff whenever I'm turning, especially in those certain stages where I keep hitting the walls despite making a turn. You do have a means of drifting by using your gravity powers. In this game, you can use your power of gravity to change your direction on those tight turns, and when it comes to dashing, you press and hold the R1 button. But much like Riders 1's air meter, you now have the gravity meter. You no longer have to worry about running out of fuel for your gear, but you'll still need to be careful not to overuse your gravity powers, otherwise they won't work properly. Now, when it comes to which game is better between Riders 1 and Zero Gravity, I have to go with the first game. Yes, the game may not be beginner friendly and simplified compared to Zero Gravity, but the game is still fun with the superior control and more smoother abilities. Zero Gravity, make no mistake, is still a fun game that's easier to pick up and understand, that carries the same amount of replayability thanks to its equally large roster of playable characters and stages, along with multiplayer and tournaments to collect rings to buy better gear for repeated playthroughs. Trust me when I say that Zero Gravity is miles better compared to the third game, Free Riders. At least this game made the right choice to giving players the option to use controller support thanks to the PlayStation 2 and the GameCube's controller for the Wii. Overall, both Sonic Riders and Zero Gravity are 2 games that I recommend giving a shot. I know that the Sonic All-Star Racing games are the better option because they carry the same formula like, say, Mario Kart, but the Riders games I believe still hold up even for today. Even though they're technically making their return thanks to Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, a game that I'm overly hyped for, I think it would be awesome that one day Riders fans can finally be given a proper sequel that is very much deserved. With that said, I'm Axel09. Everyone have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time when I review Shadow the Hedgehog for the PlayStation 2. I made a terrible mistake in buying this game for the game instead of the GameCube version. I'll see you guys later. Wish me luck.
We should split too, right?
Yes. You may be fastest for now, but I'll be back, Sonic the Hedgehog.